Hello folks, welcome to this week's edition of the Satori Traders Precious Metals News. On the cover this week we have newfound gold. In the video edition, let's jump right into the charts. I want to talk about this chart in context of the rest of the precious metals sector. So we'll come back to newfound gold. So here we are, this is gold in the daily time frame. And so I was expecting this to be a V bottom, my bullish bias, and price is going to go straight to the moon. Obviously that didn't happen. Price came down and had to test or find support again. And so what we got was this V bottom morphing into a double bottom. This week, this Andrews pitchfork is new. I believe it is describing the price action in this new uptrend. And so we can see that price is bumping into resistance at the median line of this Andrews pitchfork. And obviously it's also pushing into resistance at the 50-day moving average. So heavy resistance overhead at this point in gold, but it's just looking great. I mean, we got a MACD buy signal, what's that, 3 weeks ago, from an extremely oversold level. This is really oversold down here. Energy's extremely high, energy, momentum, however you want to look at that. So gold's just looking fine. Same story in silver. I suspect that we completed the downtrend in silver at this point. We're getting some basing action now along the 200-day moving average, obviously, and we've got the 20-day moving average acting as both support and resistance in there. So some confused price action potentially. But notice that we've got another MACD buy signal happening down here at oversold level. Energy rising, elevated and rising. So we're looking good here in silver. This 5 waves down, that's a Elliott wave theory thing. In that methodology, you look at price movements in waves of 5 and 3 as being complete. And so potentially we have a 5-wave movement here in silver, and I'll trace the wave. So this is the origin, and there's the first wave, and the second wave, there's 3 and 4 and 5. And so potentially that was the bottom of the 5th wave and a completed price movement to the downside. So here's the mining stocks, or my proxy for the mining stocks, and we're looking at the weekly time frame here in GDXJ. And what we're really looking for in any chart, regardless of the time frame, is changes in behavior. And so potentially what is happening, certainly what I'm paying attention to in this chart, we have price clearly in a downtrend, but then at this point it kind of transitioned into, the downtrend didn't continue. The downtrend morphed into some sideways, call it a range trade, bumping, shuffling, however you want to describe that. Potentially, last week marked the end of that sideways action, and the new behavior will be a resumption of the uptrend, or the start of a new uptrend. Long-acting bottoming there in MACD, and of course MACD's reaching down here to a very oversold, that's the big scary plunge in March of 20, and that's how oversold MACD got, and we're almost down at that level here. So there's a lot of room. There's a lot of upside in the mining stocks. So let's look at GDXJ in the daily time frame. And one of the keys to notice here is that we've got price dealing with it's a confluence of support and resistance zones right in there. And so we've got these last 2 candlesticks are right in the thick middle of a bunch of different support and resistance. It's the top of this pink channel. It's the median line of this Andrews pitchfork. This is a new fork in this chart. We've got the 50-day moving average providing support, and so we can see that price gapped over the 50, pulled back now, and testing it for support. So anyway, price action's looking, there's nothing wrong with that price action. MACD buy signal last week, energy is quite elevated. Everything's looking good here in mining stocks. Now let's pop back and talk about newfound gold. So over the last 2 weeks, Newfound Gold has put in this bottom along the 50-day moving average, broken up through a support resistance zone. And see, if we pull back a little bit, you can see that this zone was resistance, resistance, support. It failed. We got a little bit of it acting as resistance, some confusion, and now support. There's 1, 2, 3 candlesticks where that became support, and now we're off to the races to the upside. So in the context of the whole precious metals sector being in rally mode, this stock is behaving well. So if we look at, this is volume, and we can see that there's a rising trend there in volume, and that's exactly what we want to see. When price is rising in an uptrend, we want to see volume rising, and so that's a confirmation. Volume is confirming that Newfound is in an uptrend. MACD, both indicator lines above zero. That's what I was just babbling about. So this stock, based on MACD, is in bull mode, which means the primary trend tends to be up. Investors, they've been bored with this stock for months. Perhaps we've got a little bit of uptick. The accumulation distribution is following this uptick in volume. And then energy momentum is very elevated. So if we look at the price action, this pink fork, this is a shift fork, and we can see that on Thursday, price pushed up through that level of resistance, the median line of this fork, and then on Friday found support there, and then we got a doji. That's a bullish doji candlestick. So nice price action there. Next target to the upside, or the next place where resistance ought to come in, is 440. So, we're sitting here at, what's that, just over 440. That's a 10% rally. And so anyway, that's enough of Newfound Gold. Let's see, Eloro. Again, nothing exciting, but in the context of the precious metal sector transitioning back into rally mode, this stock it's got a very strong foundation for a new uptrend. This movement in early 21, it's based on excitement from drill results, and this is a tightly held company. So we can expect dramatic price movements in this stock because it's tightly held. But anyway, that price movement probably got a little bit overdone, and so we got a large pullback, but notice that it's a 62% fib retracement. So, that's a common level for a retracement. It's a healthy level for a retracement. So from that perspective, Eloro they've cleaned up the books and they're ready for the next rally. If we look at MACD, we can see potentially turning up. Energy momentum, obviously elevated and rising. Investors haven't picked up yet on this stock, obviously lost interest and moved on back here. So anyway, Eloro is poised to do well in a precious metals rally. I forgot to talk about SIL. Very similar to GDXJ, we've got I used gold just to have a different color to show that price is pushing up into resistance, and again, a confluence of resistance. We've got the top of this price channel, 200 moving day average not far overhead, median line of this Andrews pitchfork, but there's nothing to frown about in this chart. Price is doing very well. We got a buy signal last week. MACD's headed back up towards bull mode, momentum elevated and rising. The mining stock's just looking good. So this is the US dollar in the weekly time frame, and I'm hesitant. Some of the stuff I was reading this week, people are already writing off the uptrend in the dollar, and I'm not quite ready to do that yet. Certainly if we were looking at a very short perspective on the weekly time frame, so a couple of months, that uptrend was clearly broken. But I would also point out that these price movements are unsustainable in the first place. When price is moving in one direction or the other at that steep an angle, it is unsustainable. I'm an engineer, folks. What an engineer would tell you is that an unsustainable trend won't be sustained. And so anyway, that was an unsustainable uptrend, and it wasn't sustained. I'm sorry, folks. It's a free newsletter. I'm going to have fun. So anyway, the dollar obviously ran into support in that prior week and rolled over pretty hard, really just testing support at this point, potentially. So don't write off an uptrend in the US dollar quite yet. Let's dive into the daily time frame of the US dollar and see what we can discern. And I'm actually going to blow this up a little bit. This is what I want to look at. See, I was expecting a continuation of this uptrend. That was my expectation in the US dollar. And I was okay as these two candlesticks, that was a week prior, bumping along basically what I perceived to be a support resistance level. It's the round number at 93. But then obviously we got this, this is a high energy plunge from a support level down through that support level. So high energy move to the downside there. The dollar clearly broke its uptrend in the daily time frame. Then we got a continuation, big continuation of that downtrend. So not good action in the daily time frame of the dollar. MACD remains in bull mode, which would suggest that the primary trend remains up until proven otherwise. Big drop in energy last week. Let's reset this chart. So nothing really more to be gained there. Is basically where we finished the week, Thursday, Friday, is price, or the dollar, is testing support along this round number, 92, and we'll see what the new week brings. Interest rates, this is the 10-year yield in the weekly time frame. All signs are go. Houston, we have liftoff. The next target in this market is 2%, and there's nothing in this chart that says that's not where we're headed. Time frame, again, this is 10-year yield. Looks more like a sideways. You might describe this as a range trade, given the context of the weekly time frame, where from all indications, this is just a pullback. Price or yield is testing and finding support along this level prior to pushing off on the next up leg. Very little resistance in this area here. So I think we're likely to see 2% hit pretty darn quick. Back in the daily time frame, given that context, we might be hoping for another test of this support level down at around 159, where we might choose to load up for a resumed uptrend and a push back up to 175 and on to 2 or so. We'll see we'll see where the top in that market is. I zoomed in on the equity markets this week so we could take a close look there. So we can see this is SPX in the daily time frame. On Friday, it obviously pushed through the 4100 round number, which had been resistance. And now Friday, very bullish candle, obviously closed. Was it on? Let's see. If we look at the close, was 41.28 and the high was 41.29. So it closed 0.7 of a point off of its high. That's an extremely bullish candlestick on Friday, obviously pushing up into multiple resistance levels. We've got the upper median line of this mod shift pitchfork, the top of these uptrending channel lines. What else we got? MACD's clearly in bull mode on a buy signal, extremely elevated energy. No reason to expect an end of this uptrend other than price has to deal with a lot of resistance right now. So, maybe a pullback to test support along 4100, some sideways action we'll see this coming week. In Nasdaq, so the Dow, obviously, a big push last week again, breakout on Friday through this resistance. And so I was watching Dow through the week. It's funny. Last week I was suggesting that 33, I think, is that 450? Yeah, 450 would potentially be resistance. And sure enough, so the Dow pretty much bumped sideways there along that level all week. But then we got this big breakout on Friday. Again, another bullish candlestick. Looking for an upside target in this market. This is what I would suggest, is that 34.3 would be the upper median line of that fork. That's the best upside target I can give you for the Dow, 34.3. Extremely overbought. You know, here's 200-day moving average. Here's price way up here. I mean, extremely overbought markets, but energy remains high. MACD in a bull mode on a buy signal. No reason to think that we're not heading higher in the equity markets there. The NASDAQ, so this price move, it was the 1, 2, 3. So it was those 3 candlesticks right there that caught my attention last week as potentially marking a high energy move. And so we can see, we get price, there's a gap, somewhat bullish candlestick here, price bumps into the 50 and then pulls back. Well, you know, that's not surprising action. Obviously, we should expect resistance at the 50-day moving average. And then, you know, very super bullish action. Actually, price came from this close on this bullish candlestick, gapped all the way over the 50, all the way up into the next resistance level. So extremely bullish move right there. And so that caught my attention as being a high energy move. That's when I drew this green arrow and pointed out that this was a high energy move. And sure enough, it continued. Wasn't expecting it to continue that powerfully, but obviously it did. And so last week it's run into, that's the next obvious resistance level, was this prior price peak. And so we'll get to see in the coming week what price does as it deals with this level as resistance. Bull mode, MACD, buy signal, very high energy, you know, equities are looking good. Brent Crude, daily time frame, just bumping along, gathering support. Nothing really to say about this market. Bottoming action potentially along the support zone. Rising energy, bottoming in MACD. Folks, that's all I got for you. Went a bit long this week. I hope I provided enough value to compensate you for your time. Have a fantastic week, and I'll speak with you soon.